Welcome to the Travel Lifestyle Teleseminar. This is my first one, so I'm a little excited about it. I'm also pretty nervous about it, so please be kind to me. I am the creator of Travel Beyond Excuse, and I started out publishing a magazine. I published it for a year, and I recently discontinued the magazine. I'm now creating classes and other products to help people travel more. My goal is to have 1,000 teachers who don't currently travel to go out and start traveling the world. That's kind of my ambitious goal, is to influence 1,000 teachers to get out there. And why teachers? Because I want influential people to get other people to travel. And I think teachers can maybe influence their students to think about the world in a fresh way, and maybe their older students, encourage them when they're done with high school or whatever, if they can get out and travel. If they're college students, they can get out and do a study abroad program. I think that's an incredibly valuable education to have. And there's things that you can learn out in the real world that you could just never learn in a classroom. So 1,000 teachers traveling the world, that's my goal. So what is this? This is a travel lifestyle seminar. And I'm going to share my story of how travel has become a part of my lifestyle and some specific takeaway lessons that you can apply to your own life and travel more. Most people want to travel more. I think pretty much anybody who has a bucket list usually has one or more travel-related items on that bucket list. It's very rare that there's a bucket list without some sort of travel item on it. At the end of life, I think that it's very rare that people who have traveled say, oh my goodness, I really wish I hadn't traveled. Something that few people regret ever doing. It's something that it's one of the greatest memories most people have, is getting out and traveling. But most people see travel as kind of this elusive prize. It seems like there's all these obstacles that prevent people from getting out and traveling as much as they'd like to. And the number one obstacle that stops people is money. The general belief that people have is that travel is expensive and it just can't be afforded. There's debts to pay and bills to pay and jobs to be worked, and you just can't afford to take that time off and travel. That's the general view. The media and the travel industry don't help with that perception either, because it's not in their best interest to talk about ways where you can travel for free. They like to make money off of people, so they're going to advertise to the people who have lots of money. Even Budget Travel Magazine, I remember I subscribed to that a few years ago thinking, oh, this is great because I like to travel on a budget. And I opened it up and there's these things saying, oh, this is a wonderful deal. You can get a hotel room for only $100 a night. And I'm thinking, I barely make a little bit more than $100 working all day long. That's a lot of money. So budget travel isn't really budget travel. The travel industry really benefits from catering to people with money. They aren't interested in telling people of affordable ways to travel because they really have nothing to gain from that. They don't want you to know what I have learned from experience, which is basically that anyone can travel. When you start traveling, great things happen. There's so many benefits to travel. You can easily escape from one climate to another. If you hate winter, then at Christmas break you can hop onto a plane and visit a tropical region or a beach at Christmas time. If you hate the hot summertime, then over summer vacation you can get onto a plane and go down to the southern hemisphere, which is their winter time. Or you can go to a high mountain region where it's cooler and just enjoy the nice cooler weather. Another nice benefit of travel is when you're in a new country, everything is a new experience. Even mundane tasks like grocery shopping or walking through the neighborhood, those things become exciting and stimulating because it's new. It just stimulates all your senses. You have these new smells. You're tasting new foods. You're hearing new sounds around you, new languages. There's lots of new things to see. Even the air feels different in a lot of places. Everything is new. When you come back from a trip, you're a different person than you were when you left. Your perspectives change, you're more confident, you've handled some new situations, and your friendships may change as a result of that too. In your circle of friends, people are going to start seeing you as the world traveler. I know when I'm with my friends, a lot of times they'll introduce me as the world traveler to their friends, and I kind of like that. I like being seen as an adventurous world traveler. You'll have more stories to share when you're in social gatherings. And you may develop some new friendships. You're going to start connecting with other travelers. And that's going to generate even more travel opportunities in the future. So the more you travel, the more connections you make, which helps with more travel. Your priorities begin to change too. You're going to start looking at what you have and what you need to create a fulfilling life. And those ideas change after you become a traveler. Experiences and relationships start becoming more important than material things. Your dreams change too. I've always had a passion for education. I wanted to be a teacher ever since I was 8 years old. My dream to build a school in Mexico was kind of my dream for a long time. And then I traveled to Nicaragua in Central America, and that was kind of my first country outside of Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And after going there, I thought, wow, I could build a school anywhere in Latin America. This is really a neat place too. And then I traveled to Africa, and my dream expanded even more. I thought, well, I could build my school anywhere in the world. There's so many places that could use good schools. So I had this progressively bigger and bigger dream, and I just saw needs and opportunities all over the world. So travel really amplifies your vision and it stimulates your passions. So before we go any farther, I'm just going to be teaching a lot of these principles that I'm going to be talking about tonight in much greater depth than what I can cover in this short seminar here. So if you're interested in my travel course, it's going to be taught in this same kind of teleseminar format, and I'll be recording the classes just like I'm recording this one right now. So if you miss one, you can always catch the recording later. So just go to travelbeyondexcuse.com/class to sign up if you're interested in that. And I'll be covering a lot of topics in that class. It's going to be 5 weeks long. Okay, let me tell you a little bit about my background. When I was 7 years old, almost 8, my parents got divorced, and they went through this really ugly custody battle. My father ended up winning the custody of us, even though he was an abusive person. He told a lot of lies. It seems like the whole court case was kind of slanted. So he ended up gaining custody, and my sister and I begged our mom not to make us go live with him. And so she tried to get us back. It just, the court system said they wouldn't even hear it for 2 years. So we ended up going on the run and taking off. So my mom basically committed a felony, kidnapped us, and we moved around the South for a while, and then we moved to Mexico. And while we were in Mexico and this whole time we were on the run, we were going through a lot of financial struggles many times. There were times where we actually ran out of food. I remember when I was a kid, at one point we were still kind of learning Spanish and learning to communicate. And to support ourselves, we made bread every day, and we sold bread door to door. And I'm sure the Mexicans must have thought that was really interesting, that these little American girls and their mother were walking around the neighborhood every evening selling bread. But that's what we did to support ourselves for a while, until my mom was able to learn enough Spanish to practice her skills as a nurse and as a massage therapist. I also went through periods throughout my childhood in Mexico, and also even before and after. We lived way out in the country for a while. I went through periods in life without modern conveniences like electricity and running water. So I can relate in a lot of ways to my grandparents' generation when they talk about the hardships of living without electricity and running water. I know what they're talking about because I've had periods of that in my own life as well. So anyway, we lived in Mexico for 5 years, and that was really the best thing that ever happened to me. That was the thing that gave me my love of travel and my love of culture and language. Of course, I learned to speak Spanish fluently while we were down there. I made a lot of really great friends. Absolutely loved it. Kind of hated to return to the U.S., to be completely honest. But, we were getting to that point where my mom felt like, okay, we're growing up. We need to be reacquainted with our own culture. So we came back to the U.S., and we were in the States for a couple of years, but then we ended up getting caught. The FBI actually found us after a couple of years, and so we ended up having to go back with our dad, which is another long story, but we fought tooth and nail, and we were able to get back with our mom. So, and this time it was legal, so we were no longer on the run. So that worked out really well in the end. Shortly after I got back with my mom, at this point I was in my teens, and shortly after that is when I started college. So I started college a little bit young, and I worked through community college with a part-time job to pay my tuition. And when I got to the university, then the tuition was higher, I took out a loan to pay for my tuition. And at that point, I also began accumulating credit card debts. And when I graduated, I was a school teacher. I got a degree in education. So not exactly a lucrative career. As many of you know, I didn't make gobs of money when I graduated. So that was at that point in my life where I was beginning to accumulate a little bit of debt. I didn't have a high-paying job. In fact, I hadn't even started teaching yet. This was during the summer between graduation and the next school year. That's when I took my first international trip outside of Mexico, United States, and Canada. And I hadn't really, aside from little driving car trips to Canada, I hadn't been out of the country since my childhood in Mexico. So I went on this volunteer trip to Nicaragua. And because it was a volunteer trip, I was able to raise a lot of funds for the trip through supporters. And the friends and I who were going on this trip, we held a bunch of fundraisers, bake sales, craft sales, car washes, you name it. We worked and worked and worked and saved up over many months. We saved up the money for our plane tickets and for the particular job that we were going to go do down there, which was building a school and doing some medical work. And we planned to go ahead and stay down there after we were finished with our volunteer project, and we were going to just travel for a little bit. But of course, at that point, I didn't have very much money at all, so my budget was extremely limited, and I mean extremely limited. So we took off to Nicaragua, and I have to tell you, beginning with this very first trip, I discovered that the more you travel, the more you learn how to travel. And you also begin making connections with other travelers. Not only do you learn how to travel, but your opportunities for travel increase. So the more you travel, the more you can travel more, if that makes any sense. So I'm going to share with you some of the lessons that I have learned in my travels. And hopefully you'll find these valuable. And this is, if you have the handout, I would encourage you to follow along in the handout, because here's some tactical things that I learned that you can apply hopefully in your own travels to save a lot of money. The first lesson I learned, lesson number one, was that some places are much cheaper than others. So when I went to Costa Rica and Nicaragua with my friends and built the school, when we got finished, we were kind of on our own at that point, and my budget was $10 a day. And that was for everything. That was food, lodging, and transportation, and any entertainment and any souvenirs, everything. $10 a day. And I pretty much was able to stick with that budget because Nicaragua and Costa Rica, especially at that time, are extremely inexpensive. So the U.S. dollar will go a long ways in places like that. So just to give you an example, I remember one day we went to the marketplace and we bought our food at the market rather than going to a fancy restaurant. And my two friends and I bought enough food for all of us to have 2 meals. And I think we paid $3 for that. So basically 50 cents a meal for our food. And, you know, it was good filling food. Bus tickets were just, you know, of course we rode the local buses and we had, you know, they were cram-packed. You kind of have to be an adventurous person to travel this way, but you can imagine, you know, when your budget's $10, you don't go on the first class buses, you ride on the buses that the locals ride on. And it was fine. I mean, it's definitely something that you have to get used to if you're not used to it, but it's very cheap. I'm not advocating getting the rock bottom price for everything that you do. I think that might actually be a little bit of a dangerous way to approach things. There are a lot of places in the world where you can actually stay somewhere that's pretty nice and not pay a whole lot for it. A lot of it depends on where you are in the world. So like I said, this lesson is some places are much cheaper than others. If you go to Western Europe or New Zealand or Australia, you're going to be paying many times what you would be paying in Ecuador or Nicaragua or some other parts of the world that are a lot cheaper. So if you choose a place that's cheaper, you'll be able to do a lot more. In Nicaragua and Costa Rica, our hostels at that time, this was the year 2000, our hostels at that time were $5 a night. It might be a little bit more now, but probably not too much more. But $5 a night for some pretty clean, nice hostels. Now, some people think of hostels as these party places with, you know, the college crowd. And some hostels are kind of party hostels, but not all hostels. In fact, there are many hostels that are actually very family-friendly, and there's some that are very just any age. I've seen retirees, people that look to be in their 60s and 70s. I've seen them in hostels. So it's not just for young people, and also it's not just dorm rooms either. If you travel and stay in hostels, you'll find that many hostels actually have private rooms, and those private rooms are in decent shape, comfortable, they're clean, and they're a lot less than what you would spend for the hotel next door. So hostels are a really good option. Just keep that in mind. Another example of where money can go a lot farther is my sister one time went to Honduras. She wanted to get her scuba certification, and she discovered that for what she would pay in her hometown, she could actually fly down to Honduras, enjoy a week of beautiful world-class diving, and get certified down there for about the same cost as what she would just spend on the certification alone if she just stayed in her hometown. So naturally, she went down to Honduras, and there's a beautiful reef there that's just, I don't know that it's as amazing as the Great Barrier Reef in Australia, but it's world-class diving. And so it's a whole lot cheaper than Australia or many other hot diving places around the world. So what I'd like you to do is think about the place where you want to travel. Now, this isn't going to apply to everybody because sometimes you might want to travel somewhere for a specific reason, like, that's where your ancestors are from and you want to go and reconnect with your roots. And so that's going to be a specific place that can't be changed. But what I want you to think about is, what experience are you seeking in this place that you want to visit? Most of us have a place that, oh man, I'd really love to go there someday. So think about, where would you like to go? And then what experience are you seeking from that place? Are you after a beach experience? Are you after a mountain experience? Are you into architecture? Are you into culture? What is it that you want from that trip? And then next, I'd like you to think about, is there a cheaper destination where you could have that experience? So for example, if you really want to go scuba diving, if scuba diving is the experience you're after, maybe Australia is not a realistic option for you in the near future, but Honduras certainly would be, and you would get a great experience there. So I want you to think about that. Where can you get the best deal for your dollar? For some inspiration, I highly recommend reading World's Cheapest Destinations by Tim Leffel. And again, in the handout, I have a link to that book. But that's a great book to get some inspiration and some ideas for really inexpensive, nice places to travel all over the world. He's got places in Europe, places in Latin America, places in Asia. So, and he kind of breaks it down by what you can expect to spend at each of those places. I highly recommend that book if you're open to going to some place that's not a real specific. If you have a place that you definitely want to go and you don't want to waver from that, that's your choice. But if you have the flexibility to go somewhere else, check out that book, because it'll give you some great ideas and a good idea of what you'll be spending. Okay, lesson 2. The second lesson I learned through my travels was that frequent flyer miles are easy to get. Now bear with me here, because a lot of people, when I tell them that I collect frequent flyer miles, they say, well, that must be really nice, but I don't fly that much. Well, I learned about frequent flyer miles first on my South Africa trip, and that was the next international trip I took after my Nicaragua, Costa Rica trip. Yeah, I was dating a South African at the time, so he invited me to come down and get to know his family in South Africa. So he covered my plane ticket, and he did it with frequent flyer miles. So I started asking questions about frequent flyer miles. How do they work? And he's the one that taught me a little bit about frequent flyer miles and how they work. And then when I got back from that trip, I started collecting frequent flyer miles myself. I taught for a couple of years, and then I went to work for the state of Colorado. And while I was working for Colorado, I would earn miles on business trips. Sometimes I would be doing work that involved an overnight stay. So every time I stayed in a hotel, I'd be earning miles. When I ate out, of course, this was company expense. When I ate out, I would be earning miles for the food that I'd purchased. And then my own personal purchases, I could earn miles for those by buying things online through shopping portals. And I also earned a lot of miles by signing up for credit cards that have sign-up bonuses. So, for example, the American Express Delta card. And I earned, I think, 25,000 miles on that, which gave me enough to go on a domestic flight for free. So I just went like crazy and started earning miles. And a couple years later, I decided to go visit a friend of mine who lived in Benin, which is in West Africa. And at that point, I had enough miles saved up for a ticket. So I went ahead and bought my ticket with my miles. And when you use miles, you still have to pay the fees and taxes on a ticket. So it's not 100% free, but it's not bad. So when I went to South Africa, I arranged my ticket so that I would go, or not South Africa, West Africa. I arranged my ticket so that I could go from where I lived to Benin, West Africa. And then after my 3-week stay or so in Benin, I was going to spend a few days in Paris, France, on the way back. So I had a West Africa and a Paris stop, and then back to my original destination. And that multi-city ticket was $86. So normally you'd be looking at easily $1,500 to $2,000 for a trip like that. So $86 and some miles for a multi-city international plane ticket. Not bad. And since then, I have flown all over the world on frequent flyer miles. And I've flown all over the country on frequent flyer miles. They're really quite easy to get, and I would encourage anybody to sign up for a frequent flyer mile account if they don't have one already. So what you need to do is find out which airline flies to the destination you'd like to go see, and then get a frequent flyer mile account on that airline. And I'm going to be going into much, much greater detail in my travel course on things like which frequent flyer programs are the best ones to get into, the different frequent flyer mile alliances, partnerships that airlines have with each other. So you earn miles on one airline, but you can actually redeem them on another airline if it's a partner. I'll be getting into all those kinds of nitty-gritty details in my travel course. So if you want to learn more about frequent flyer miles, I'll be getting into a lot more depth and exactly how you can earn them and all of that in my course. So once again, if you're interested in my travel course, which is going to be taught in the same teleseminar format, go to travelbeyondexcuse.com/class and sign up. So anyway, my challenge for you is figure out which airline goes to your preferred destination, sign up and get a frequent flyer mile account, which is free to do. You can just go to their website and find their frequent flyer section and sign up for a frequent flyer number, and then look on their website. There's going to be a section that's something along the lines of earn miles or ways to earn miles. I want you to look at all of their partners where you can earn miles. And I'm guessing there's probably something in that list of ways to earn miles that you do already. So it'll be something that won't cost you any more money than what you already spend, and you can be earning miles for doing it. So definitely go check it out, and then I want you to write down all the ways that you could be earning miles right now on that airline without having to fly. Okay, lesson number 3, and that is you don't have to pay for lodging. Lodging can be free. There's lots of different ways to do it, and the first way I discovered was a friend introduced me to this website called globalfreeloaders.com, and I thought, well, that sounds kind of weird, but I went in, I signed up, I got an account, I checked it out, and at this point is when our Benin and France trip was coming up. So I thought, well, I had been looking at lodging options in Paris, and Paris is just dreadfully expensive. Even a hostel I had to spend, I think the cheapest hostel I could find, which I don't recommend ever staying at the absolute cheapest because you're going to get some questionable characters there. You want to stay 1 or 2 notches up from the cheapest. But the cheapest one was like $25 for just a dorm bed. So you're in a room with a bunch of strangers in the cheapest hostel in the city. Not really a situation I wanted to be in. And so I went ahead and looked up people in Paris on Global Freeloaders, and lo and behold, there were several that looked kind of promising. I emailed one of them who was actually originally from Australia. He was staying in France for a few months learning French, and he was a lawyer from Australia. And so I told him that a friend and I would be coming through Paris and asked, if we could stay with him. And he said yes. So that was my first experience with free lodging, and we were when we got there, he met us at the metro and walked us to his apartment, gave us a key so we could let ourselves in and out all we wanted, and just super hospitable. And we just stayed, in the living room. Just slept. One of us slept on the floor, one of us slept on the couch. So it wasn't super fancy, and it might not be something that a lot of people would be comfortable with, but for us it was fine, and it was free. Since then, I've discovered couchsurfing.com, which is actually a much bigger community. I think it's a little newer, but it's just exploded, and it's totally worldwide. It's an amazing community of travelers and hosts. You have to read the profiles to make sure the people that you're reading about are the kinds of people that you might want to stay with, or whether you'd feel comfortable with that. But there are some great people. I have hosted many people, and I've also surfed with many people. That's kind of the term for staying as a guest, is surfing. And I've stayed with many people, and I've never had a bad experience. It's always been just the most wonderful, hospitable people. It's kind of a revival of the lost art of hospitality, where you just welcome people into your home. You don't have to worry about making it all perfect. Just be yourself, welcome people in, and share your experiences with them. So I highly recommend couch surfing. A lot of people are concerned about safety with couch surfing, and that is a valid concern because, you never know who you could be getting in with. It's a bunch of strangers. There are a lot of safety measures in place with couch surfing, and one thing that I do is I never ever stay with somebody or allow somebody to stay with me unless I see that they have several references and that they're all positive references. So check people's references and read their profile, because you'll learn a lot about people in their profile, and if their profile isn't filled out very well, skip it. That's another requirement. If I don't learn enough about them on their profile to feel like I have a little bit of a handle on who this person is, I won't accept them to stay with me, and I won't ask them if I can stay with them. So just by taking that step, it takes a little bit more time to really thoroughly go through everything. But then you get to know the person that you're going to be corresponding with, and then you start corresponding with them. Tell them a little bit about yourself, what you're doing in their area, and what it is about their profile that really resonated with you, why you'd like to stay with them. If you put some thought into your request, then that will increase the chances that they'll allow you to stay with them, because they can see that you really have read their profile. Because some people just cut and paste requests to everybody in a region, and you can just tell that they haven't read your profile. So it really pays to put some thought into the request. And by doing that, a high percentage of the people that I request accept me, and so I've been able to stay with a lot of different people. And again, this couch surfing is for all ages. I have stayed with retirees, I've stayed with families with young kids, I've stayed with college students, and I've hosted the wide range of people as well. So this is not limited by age or anything like that, so you don't need to feel uncomfortable if maybe you're in your 50s or whatever. This is for everybody. So if you're uncomfortable staying in other people's houses, and if you're uncomfortable allowing strangers into your own house, that's fine. I still challenge you to sign up for couch surfing, because in addition to being a place where you can find free lodging, it's also just a neat community of people that you can meet up with travelers, just take them out for coffee or show them around your town. Or when you're traveling, just contact one and say, hey, I'm in your area. Do you have time to meet up and have coffee with me and chat with each other and get connected with people? One of the biggest keys to being able to travel a lot, in addition to just knowing how to work the frequent flyer mile game and find free lodging and things like that, one of the biggest keys is just building connection. And a lot of my travel experiences have been because of the friendships I have developed with people, and if they travel or move to another area, they welcome me to come and stay with them. So for example, that's how I got to go to the Galapagos Islands. I had some friends who were moving there for a few months to work on a project on the islands, and they said, hey, if anybody wants to come and visit us, and they just kind of sent out an invitation to all their friends, if anybody wants to come and visit us in the Galapagos Islands while we're here, you'll have a free place to stay. Well, of course, I took them up on it. I can't pass up an opportunity like that. So, that's another whole story, the Galapagos trip, because I did some other little travel ninja things on that too. So But while we were on the islands there, we had a free place to stay. Another friend of mine went with me, and my sister came with me as well. So there were three of us on this trip visiting our friends and staying at their house, and it was a great experience. But if you connect with people via couch surfing or other ways and just develop friendships, there's going to be opportunities for you to travel more. And, be sure to pay it forward too and host travelers in your own house. That hospitality, even if you don't have a fancy place, it's nice to be able to just let people come and stay with you once in a while. It's a lost art, and I think it's a good thing. So, yes, my challenge is sign up for couchsurfing.org. Even if you don't plan to host or stay with somebody, just sign up and start connecting, start networking, meet people for coffee, meet a traveler and show them around your town. Anything like that makes a big difference. It helps you to learn a little bit about them and where they come from too. So in the travel course, I'm going to be getting into a lot more depth about free and cheap lodging options. I just mentioned couch surfing and global freeloading here, but there are tons of different options. I haven't even scratched the surface. There's some that I've personally done, and some that I've learned about through corresponding with other travel experts while I was publishing my magazine. And there's also many, many other ways to save travel besides lodging and besides airfare. There's just so many different things you can do, and I'm going to be covering a lot of ideas in my travel course. So if you're interested, go ahead and go to travelbeyondexcuse.com/class and sign up. So I just want to say, travel is more than just lazing on the beach or seeing famous landmarks and trying weird foods. Travel is so much more than that. It's about personal growth. It's about learning and becoming a better and more well-rounded person. It's about connecting with other human beings. It's about forging friendships and learning about the goodness of people all over the world. It's about having the courage to follow our dreams and our passions and to come back home energized and ready to contribute to our classrooms and our communities with the lessons that we learn from other parts of the world. And every trip I take teaches me new lessons. Travel does take effort, especially when you're doing it on a budget the way I'm going to be teaching. It does take effort. It also takes adventurousness, and it takes open-mindedness. But I think these things can be cultivated, even if they don't come naturally to you at first. But I think you can cultivate that. It's so worth it. Travel is just the best education and the best experience you can possibly give to yourself, and not only to yourself, but to your family and to the people that you come in contact with. You become a more interesting person, and it's just the best thing that you can do, in my opinion. Travel is the best education. So if you liked this, if you learned something, I would encourage you to go to travelbeyondexcuse.com/class and go ahead and sign up for my full course. I'm going to cover these topics, and I'm going to cover them in a lot more detail than I did here on this call. And also, if you're not already on the Travel Beyond Excuse newsletter, be sure to sign up. I'll be putting out free tips, and I may host more free seminars in the future. So I'll let you know about those in the newsletter, so be sure to sign up for that. And lastly, you can follow Travel Beyond Excuse on Facebook too. I use that as a place to post interesting travel-related articles that I read, and whenever I see an amazing travel deal, I tell my Facebook followers about it as soon as I can. So go check that out. I try to put useful stuff on there, and every now and then I post a funny something or another as well. So I am guilty of posting the occasional cat picture, but I try to keep it mostly travel related. So go check that out and go ahead and like that page. Sign up for my newsletter, and above all, if you liked this, please go to travelbeyondexcuse.com/class and sign up for my full travel course. I'm looking forward to seeing you there. Bye-bye.